Hello everyone, welcome to another draft class recap video. Today we're going to be talking about the New York Jets, so let's get started. The New York Jets are a team that, I don't know, I don't really have that much of an opinion of them right now. They seem very vanilla, if you will, very flying under the radar kind of deal, which I guess can be a good thing because, everybody's sort of not paying that much attention to you, so the expectations are kind of minimal. Jets fans, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we're expecting too much out of this team. Yes, the window is open for them to, vault over the Patriots now that Tom Brady's out of the division, and the Miami Dolphins are still in a rebuild. The Bills seem to be your biggest competitor right now, and you do have a pretty talented team. It's just not flashy and gets a ton of headlines for whatever reason that may be. Last year, the whole Sam Darnold situation, him being out with mono, that sucks because it hindered his development, I think, a little bit. But at the same time, I think that we saw that this team is not very good without him. And at least in this draft, it seems that they have learned their lesson and they've got some more options to compete for the backup role, which we'll talk about in a minute. Other than that, it is what it is. It's a team that still has a lot of pieces that it needs, and I think this draft is going to send them on the right direction. The only thing I think that can hinder any good news for the New York Jets would be that their head coach is Adam Gase. Jets fans, I'm going to preface this right now. I'm not a fan of his. I've never been a fan of his since he left Denver. It's just one of those things. He had all of these really good tools in Miami, like Devontae Parker, Ryan Tannehill, Kenyon Drake, and then Tannehill and Kenyon Drake go to other places and they start having success. Why couldn't he do that with them in Miami? I don't know. Le'Veon Bell is a question mark. I don't know really where, how they're going to properly utilize him this season. It's just something that I have to dive into a little bit more as the season progresses. And when I start doing team previews, probably next month, it'll be an area where we can further have this discussion. But right now, we're just talking about the draft, and I'm going to be honest. I think this draft is pretty good. I say that about a lot of teams, but I look at what they're doing, and on paper, I'm a fan of this, and we'll talk about why here in a minute. So let's just get started with round 1, pick 11, Makai Becton, offensive tackle out of Louisville. I think it was a pretty solid, debate about what they were going to do with their first overall pick at the 11th spot, whether it was going to be offensive line, a defensive player, or wide receiver. A lot of people thought maybe Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb in this spot to give Sam Darnold another weapon to go all out with. But I think Makai Becton, walking away with one of the top 4 offensive tackles in this class is probably the best bet that they could have made. Makai Becton is just an absolute monster, an absolute machine. The way that he just puts people into the ground, it's absolutely ridiculous. We all remember Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft many moons ago, where it was the first time that we actually heard about this kid because he had him mocked to number 4 overall to the Giants. And everybody was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, listen, this isn't me. This is what I'm hearing through my connections." And it turned out to be a good mock draft because he went almost top 10. He went 11 overall. So I think Makai Becton at this spot. I was more of a fan of Tristan Wirfs, who went 3 or 4 picks later. I forget what it was, but it's hard to debate an offensive tackle in the first round, especially in the top 15. Those are usually pretty safe picks. Moving on to round 2, pick 59, Denzel Mims, wide receiver from Baylor. I guess all the pre-draft hype about him was bullshit because I think in my bold predictions video I had him going top 15. He ends up going 59 overall. So, whoops, missed that one. Honest to God, I thought that the Panthers were going to snag him up before anybody else because I thought maybe Matt Rule was going to have this. Oh, I got to get players that I'm familiar with in this draft, so I got to get Baylor kids and Temple kids, all that kind of stuff. But, Denzel Mims, I think, is a great pick for the Jets. Absolutely needed help at wide receiver. His college career, 186 receptions, 2,925 yards, 28 touchdowns. Second in the Big 12 last year with 12 receiving touchdowns, and third in the Big 12 last year with 1,020 receiving yards. So definitely a very much needed influx of youth at the position. Moving on to round 3, pick 68, Ashton Davis, safety from California. I'm going to give this the magnet of jealousy. I really thought Ashton Davis could have been a first-round pick. We've already talked about how none of the safeties went in the first round, but I'm jealous of this pick. I would have liked to have had this kid in Minnesota. For his career, 166 tackles, 7 interceptions, 12 passes defended. Also adds kick return value. He did that for a couple years at Cal, but last year they seem to have slid him out of that role. Didn't do it as much as the previous 2 years, but if they need him to do it, I'm sure he can. Moving on to the next third-round pick 79, Jabari Zuniga, I think is how it's pronounced, edge rusher from Florida. 116 career tackles, 18 and a half sacks, 33 tackles for loss. Definitely a backfield disruptor. It kind of, every time I think of Florida edge rushers now, I'm just going to start thinking of Makai Becton, who was, projected to be a first-round pick and then fell all the way to the third just because of his terrible-ass combine that he had. This is obviously not the same thing. I'm just drawing the Florida memory. So I think Jabari is probably going to be a much better prospect in this league than Makai Becton ever was, who just seemed to fall off the wagon. Next, round 4, pick 120, Lamichael Pirine, running back from Florida. 193 carries, 2,485 yards, 22 touchdowns. Also a very versatile back out of the backfield in passing game. 72 receptions, 674 yards, 8 touchdowns. 9th in the SEC in touchdowns with 11 last year. Kind of a down year for his senior year. The previous year he had an average yards per carry of 6.2, and then this year for whatever reason fell to a 5.1. So he probably could have went higher in this draft had he had a better final season, but it just wasn't in the cards. Moving on, round 4, pick 125, James Morgan, quarterback of Florida International. This is what I was talking about earlier about getting a little bit better of backup options for Sam Darnold this year instead of Luke Falk, who was just absolutely clueless. He just fish out of water. That's harsh criticism, I understand, but at the same time, I think that we both over ridicule teams when they get really good backups, like why are you doing this? You're creating a quarterback controversy. And then, we don't ridicule teams enough for just abdicating the situation altogether. I think we need to have a serious discussion about how valuable it is in this league to take better interest in your backup quarterback role, because, had the Vikings had Sean Mannion on the roster in 2017 instead of Case Keenum, I don't think that magic season doesn't. I think that magic season doesn't happen. And we saw last year with the Steelers flipping back and forth between Mason Rudolph and Hodgins, or what was that kid's name? Delvin Hodges. That was a complete disaster. So, that's for another video, but I just wanted to sort of bring that up. But James Morgan's career, 669 completions, nice. 8,654 yards, 65 touchdowns, 6th in Conference USA last year in passing yards with 2,585, and 9th in Conference USA last year in passing touchdowns with 14, which is not good because it was down from the 26 he had the previous year. So similar to Lamichael Pirine from Florida, who didn't have a good final season. James Morgan also had a down final year, probably affected his draft stock, although interestingly enough, later on in the process leading up to the draft, his name surfaced as the potential sneaky sleeper quarterback pick, and then everybody's like, okay, let's put on the film. And I put on the film, and I didn't really see anything that exceptional. Moving on, their final 4th-round pick 129, Cameron Clark, guard from Charlotte. You need to absolutely fill the trenches. I have no problems with this pick. Moving on to round 5, pick 158, Bryce Hall, corner from Virginia. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. The injury just the wrong time. You get the injury, then COVID-19 happens. You can't do in-person physicals and meetings and whatnot with teams, so a little harder to shake that medical red flag. And it's just unfortunate. He was projected as a first-round pick, and it's just a shame. So I think, in my opinion, if the medical red flag checks out and all is well, which it should be, this is an absolute steal in the 5th round. Absolute steal. 154 tackles, 5 interceptions, 38 passes defended. Those stats are a little underinflated because he missed time with the injury. Only played, I think it was like 9 games last year. Just a super unfortunate situation. Thought the world of this kid last year when he should have come out in the draft, but it is what it is. And then the final pick, round 6, pick 191, Brandon Mann, punter from Texas A&M. I nothing really to say about that pick other than thank you for waiting until the 6th round to take a punter. All right, so the other selection, the other magnet I have is the magnet of, we'll call it the magnet of intrigue. So the player that intrigues me the most is going to be Bryce Hall. And I think I've really sort of made my point about that already. So that is the New York Jets 2020 NFL Draft. As I said, it's a pretty decent draft. I'm not giving draft grades, as I've said before. Maybe I'll do a final video where I grade all the drafts really quick or something. I don't even know. That's up for debate. But I think they've done very well and addressed places where they absolutely had need and filled this team with value. Makai Becton should be a solid player. Denzel Mims, I'm excited to see at the next level. Ashton Davis, I think, is an immediate contributor. And then you have people like Bryce Hall, I think is a steal if the medical red flags check out. So that is my take on the New York Jets draft. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.